স্যার হব ধন্যবাদ
Yeah, good morning, everybody. So today we are going to discuss about the democracy. It is the second unit of the MPS 1. So in the last class we have discussed the first unit, that is the political theory, its meaning, its nature, its evolutions, its relationship with history, philosophy and science, and its significance too. Today we are going to discuss about the concept of democracy, about the meaning of the democracy, justification of democracy, types of democracy, and its importance. So come to the first concept, democracy. Political science and the concept democracy is too closely related. How it is closely related? It is because political science deals with state and government, and democracy is a form of government where we are nowadays. If we want to discuss about the democracy, then we must know about its origin. If we trace back to the origin of the democratic concept or democratic government, then we must have to pay importance about the administrative system which were available in the Greek period. We know in 1992 we have celebrated the 2005 years of democracy. It means till 1992 we have crossed the history of democracy almost to 2500 years. So where the democracy first started? The democracy first started in the Greek city state. This was an unusual celebration. Which was the unusual celebration? The 2500 years of democracy celebrations. When it was celebrated? It was celebrated in 1992. So it was an unusual celebration because while anniversaries of the statesmen, revolutions, and the founding of the nations are quite commonly celebrated, no other political ideal has ever been celebrated in this way. So democracy is an ideology. Democracy is a concept. Democracy is a principle. No principle, no ideology, no concept ever have been celebrated in the world except the concept democracy. So it has a charming. Democracy has its own charming. Democracy in modern world is quite different from the democracy what it was in 2500 years ago. So present democracy, we can't say that the present democracy is same with the ancient democracy. The present democracy is somewhat different from the ancient period. So come to the concept. Uh, 1 minute.
We are two.
Okay. The word democracy, when we discussed about the democracy, we should know the origin of the democracy. I have already said. Then come to the regular part. The word democracy itself is of Greek origin. The word democracy derives from the Greek word. It originated in the Greek, so it is very easy to keep in mind the word democracy comes from Greek language. The Greek word demokratio, 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 is a combination of the words demos, meaning the people, and the kratos, meaning the rule. So what is the meaning of the democracy? This gives democracy is a meaning, as a form of government in which the people rule, whether directly through personal participation or indirectly through elected representatives. So democracy means it is a form of government where the full power, all the powers are vested in the hands of the peoples. When people rule themselves, that is the democracy. So the word, how the people can rule themselves, it is in a two way. One is the directly, another is the indirectly. What is the direct democracy? When people can directly involve in the decision making process, when people can take their decisions own selves, whence they can change the government at any time, when every law, every rules are framed according to the will of the people, that is the direct democracy. On the other hand, what is indirect democracy? Indirect democracy is that through which the government take the decisions in favor of the students for the government takes the decisions for the peoples. Government takes the decisions for the peoples by their representative. It means representative democracy, we can say as indirect democracy. The main difference between the ancient and modern democracy, of course, is in a way in which people were defined. People, who are the peoples? Whose power? We have already said in a democracy, all powers are in the hands of the peoples. So who are the peoples? Present day peoples and ancient day peoples. When we will discuss, we will examine, analyze, then we will get some differences. In ancient Greek polity, the demos was rather restrictively defined and notably excluded three main categories of the persons: the slaves, the women, and the metics. Metics means the foreigners. So ancient period, this democracy, when they are thinking about the formations of the democratic government and powers of the peoples, they excluded a group of peoples. All peoples were not considered as citizens. The best word, we can realize the people's difference on the basis of the citizens. They did not recognize all the citizens who were living in the society, whom they had excluded: the slaves, those who work under a master; women, who are dominated by the patriarchal society; and the metics, they are the foreigners who lived and work in the city state. So the slaves, the women, and the metics did not get their rights in political field when we are talking about the democracy of the past. This means that barely a quarter of the total populations were members of the citizens' body. So what we are saying, only 1/4 peoples, in the ancient period get chance to take part in the decision making process or in the functions of the government. Nevertheless, the direct participation of 40,000 strong citizen body was no mean achievement. So, if we think about this, the evolution of the democracy or the democracy in the ancient period, we have found that though the democracy mean it is the power of the all peoples, yet all the peoples were not granted the political right in the Greek city state or in the ancient period. The actual career of Athenian democracy was fairly troubled, as aristocrats, generals, and demagogues made periodic attempt to control the power. So, though democracy is for all, but in Athenian city or in the Greece, we have seen that it was dominated by the aristocrat group, whom we can say as the aristocrat group. This is the elite sections of the peoples. Generals, the powerful military group, or maybe military group or others, and also we can say the other demagogues. Demagogues are who are the good orators, who are the manipulators, who are the agitators. And this group of the peoples who involved in agitations good leader, they control and conduct the nation, or they control and conduct the society. Democracy was achieved through struggle against considerable odds. Indeed, the struggle for democracy everywhere and throughout history has been simultaneously a struggle against the political inequality based on and justified by inequalities of birth and wealth. So what we are saying, that democracy has its own past, own own history, and this is the history of what? It is the history of struggle. What is the history of the struggle? The democracy is a result of struggle because democracy came into exist as against of the inequality, political inequality and injustice and inequality which were available in the society forced the political system, forced the peoples, forced the society to rethink, to think about the establishment of democracy. Then come to the historical background of the democracy. Nowadays, most of the countries of the world are democratic countries. Though we have already discussed that the democracy started in Greece, in Athens, but most of the country till the 18th century were dominated by monarchy. So what is this monarchy? Where the power of the state are vested in the hands of the persons on the basis of hereditary principles, or we can say the king, the son of the king will become the king and they control the state, they control the nations. But this is the monarchical form of government, this such type of monarchical form of government overthrown by democracy. So if we think about the modern democracy, your main concern of this topic is the modern democracy. This modern democracy first developed in Britain. The first modern democratic country of the world, it is the Britain. Keep in mind, though the democracy started from Greece, though democracy originated in Greece, but we can say the modern democracy emerged in Britain. Britain is regarded as the first modern democratic country of the world. In Britain, this change was signaled by the industrial revolutions that began in the middle of the 18th century. So, why it is said that it is the first modern democratic countries? It is because of the industrial revolutions took place in Britain. What is the industrial revolution? Industrial revolutions means expansion of trade and commerce, expansion of machine, expansion of industries, expansion of companies. So how the companies is related, how the industries are related? These all are related on the basis of their production system, on the basis of their marketing system, and on the basis of their profit making system. If we analyze the concept, then we'll see that industrial revolution is based on the concept of liberty. So industrial revolution is based on the concept of liberty. What type of liberty? Liberty of thought, liberty of work, and liberty of deed. Liberty of thought, work, and deed. This is the liberty of the peoples. People's liberty forced them to become more superior than the others, and as a result, this competitive nature helps the emergence of the industrial revolution in Britain, and it led to the democracy. Again, in France and America, it was launched by the political revolutions in the last quarter of the same century. In the 18th century too. In the 18th century, Britain started the democratic ideology. In France started their democratic nature, and America, USA, United States of America also launched the democratic ideology. Along with this, we should keep in mind that the British in Britain they started the democracy not only as a result of industrial revolutions but also as a result of glorious revolutions which was taken place in 1688. 1688. It is known as the glorious revolutions. In the aftermath of the civil war in 17th century of royal absolutism, yes, what I have already said, this is the glorious revolution, was brought to an end of the powers and transferred the power from the crown to parliament. The glorious revolution of Britain, it forced the government to transfer their power from the king, from the crown, from the royal family to the parliament. This is the development in Britain. The franchise continued to be highly restricted, though the British started the democratic ideology. But the franchise continued to be highly restricted based on the ownership of property. Control of the executive had effectively passed to a loose coalitions of the aristocracy and bourgeois. How? What does it mean? Think about this. What is the franchise? Franchise means right to vote. Democracy is based on election. Democracy is based on voting system. Who has the power to vote? In a real democracy, all the citizens are allowed to vote without any discrimination on the ground of caste, community, religion, gender, etc. But though British started the modern democracy in the 17th and 18th century, but they had not allowed all the peoples to cast their vote. Their franchise means the right to vote was restricted. Only a group of peoples. Who are those group who were allowed to cast their vote? The ownership of the property, it means the rich people. Control of the executive effectively passed a loose coalitions of the aristocracy and bourgeois, the aristocratic peoples and the bourgeois peoples, propertyful peoples, rich peoples, powerful peoples, elite group, and the capitalist group. They were allowed to cast their vote, or they got the right to franchise. It was only in the 19th century. It was only in the 19th century that the expansion of suffrage took place. This the right to vote expanded, spread. It was open. It was open in a large level in 19th century, beginning with the enfranchisement of the upper middle class in the Reform Act of 1832. So till where it was expanded? It was expanded to the upper middle class, rich class, capitalist class, the executive group, royal families, and then it was expanded to middle class till 1832. This was followed by a gradual extension of franchise to the working classes. Slowly and gradually, the right to vote transferred from the higher class to lower class too. This is the working class group. They were allowed to take part in the franchise system. Largely a response to the pressure of the political struggle by the working class and radical movement by the Chartism. So it is not easy if we discuss that how the suffrage right, how the enfranchisement right come down to the working class. Then we will able to see that it is because of revolution, it is because of the movement, it is because of the struggle which were led by the working class. Working class got their right to vote, got their right to take part in the decision making process, got their political right as a result of their involvement in movement. They had not got the right very easily. Where? In England. The first modern democratic country did not allow all sectors of the peoples the political rights, but the working class, then the lower class peoples, they got the power, they got their rights by revolutions, on the basis of the revolution, on the basis of the radical movement. By the last quarter of the 19th century and the three Reforms Act later, about 2/3 of the male population stood franchised. So till by the last quarter of the 19th century, if we see the last quarter of the 19th century, then 3 reforms acts had been taken place, and these 3 reform acts allowed 2/3 of the male peoples. Keep it in mind, the British did not allow the women to take part in the political matters, in the decision making process, or in the right to vote, or right to contest, or right to criticize the government. Women were not allowed till the 19th century, last quarter till 19th century. 2/3 male populations stood the franchise. It means 1/3 males were also not allowed to involve in the decision making process. It was, however, not until 1929 that women secured the right to vote. So the question may have to come that when the women of the England got their right to vote, it was in 1929. The universal adult suffrage was fully achieved only in 1948. The universal adult suffrage means all the adult persons allowed to cast their vote without any discrimination in England. It was started in 1948 when plural voting was abolished in favor of the principles of one person, one vote. Before 1948, there were plural voting system. It means a persons may cast more than one vote, or the value of the vote was more than they cast. But from 1948, the British started the principles that there will be one person, one vote. It means one person, one value. It was started in England. Then in come to the another state we have already discussed. It is the France, the most powerful countries in that period: England, France, and America. In France too, the democracy had developed. In France, the more radical tradition of democracy was inaugurated by the Revolution of 1789. Like in England, the England started democracy as a result of the glorious revolution of 1688. The democracy of France developed as a result of their revolution of 1789. This is known as French revolutions. It was based, or we can say, it is a strong call of liberty, equality, fraternity, and emphasis on the principles of popular sovereignty. The French revolutions occurred on the basis of this concept. What are those concepts? Liberty of the people, equality of the peoples, fraternity among peoples, and popular sovereignty of the government, popular sovereignty of the state. These four concepts brought the democratic ideology to the French. The Declaration of the Rights of the Man and Citizen proclaimed the rights of the personal liberty, freedom of thought and the religion, security of property, and political equality as the natural and imprescriptible entitlements not merely to French citizens but of the mankind at large. So, what was the Declaration of the Rights of the Man and Citizens in France? France declared that every man must have some rights. What are those rights? The personal liberty, freedom of thought, and the religion, right to religion, freedom of thought, and personal liberty. Along with what are those? Other some natural rights also recognized by the French government. It was the security of the property and political equality. So they believe that these all rights not only essential for the French people, but also these are essential for the greater interest of the whole human people, whole human group of the world. So mankind at large. So what are the basis of the democracy of France? It was the liberty of the people, it was the freedom of the thought of the people, it was the freedom of the religion of the peoples, it is related the security of the life and property of the peoples, and it is they treated democracy is essential for the better development of the or all-round development of the humanism. Initially, The revolutionary constitutions of 1791 established something akin to universal male suffrage, and even the property requirement for right to vote was low enough to exclude only the domestic servants, vagrants, and beggars. If we think, when we discussed about the democracy, election or suffrage or right to vote comes automatically with it. When we see the right to vote, right to take part in the decision making process of the peoples, then we will find in France too that till 1791 or the 1791 constitution of the France, it did not allow all the peoples to take part in the decision making process. They exclude domestic servants, vagrants, and beggars. So, whom they excluded? Servants, vagrants, and beggars. Who are the vagrants? Vagrants are the beggars. They are like the vagabonds. They are the tramps. They are the drifters, or like that. We can say we should keep in our mind these three words, that servants, vagrants, and beggars were not allowed to take part in the decision making process of the French democracy in its initial period. Universal male suffrage was reintroduced only after the revolution of 1848. The 1848 France recognized the universal male suffrage. Keep in mind, not the all people suffrage. Universal, not universal adult suffrage. It was universal male suffrage. Till when? Till 1848. The universal adult franchise only a century later in 1946, when women owned the right to vote. So the women of France got the right to vote in 1946 only in France. Keep it in mind. In 1946, the women of the France, they got the right to vote. Then come to America. We have already discussed about the England, then to France, and now we are going to discuss about America. The Declaration of Independence in 1776 was the document that simultaneously effected the legal creation of United States of America and that of the democracy in the country. So the democracy in America, in the United States of America, started with its Declaration of Independence. In the United States, the advance of democracy in the aftermath of the Civil War was restricted to white men, and the enfranchisement of the women, as also indigenous and black peoples, were not achieved until the 20th century. So, if we see in case of America, though they have started their republic, United States of America, a democratic country at the time of their independence, but they also, or United States also, did not allow all to take part in the decision making process in the formation of the government. It was restricted to white men. It was restricted to white men only. Women, indigenous, and black people was not achieved until 20th century. Okay, indigenous and black peoples was not achieved until 20th century. So this was another drawbacks of the American democracy till 20th century. Then come to the next one. The beginning of the democratic theory are distinguished by a strong emphasis on the concept of liberty rather than the concept of equality with which it later come to be identified. So after discussing about the development of the democracy from Greek to America, then we can realize what are the core issues which were gain prominence, importance in the jurisdiction of democracy, in the arena of democracy. If we see, then we will find out in the starting of the democratic concept, in the starting of the democratic theory, the strong emphasis were paid on liberty. So we can say liberty is a backbone of democracy. Liberty is a core issue of democracy rather than the concept of equality with which it later come to be identified. And laterly another word gain importance in democracy, that is equality. So in here I want to say you another thing. Generally what we say that there are four what we can say, this is the four pillar of democracy. Generally we always say that there are four pillars of democracy, and we commonly say what are those four pillars: executive, legislature, judiciary, and media. But keep in mind, these four pillars are not the four pillars of democracy. These are the four pillars of government. So there's a difference between government and democracy. Then what are the four pillars of democracy? The four pillars of democracy, exactly, it is the liberty, equality, justice, and fraternity. So keep it in your mind, the basis of the democracy, the core issue of the democracy, the main issues of the democracy are what? Equality, liberty, justice, and fraternity. If in a society the people can realize that they are equal, they have liberty, there are integrity, brotherhood, fraternity, and they are not out of justice, then it becomes automatically a democratic country. So among of these four concepts, which are the concepts gain prominence in which period or in which state? If we see the evolution of democracy, then we have already found that it was the liberty who came first. It was the liberty who came first in the jurisdiction of democracy. And what is the second one? Second one is the equality. So these both concepts, though we have already discussed, but we should keep in mind that this is the development of the ideology developed by various political scientists like Locke and Rousseau. Rousseau said that men born free and everywhere they are insane. So Rousseau is one of the great persons who influenced in the French revolutions too. The 20th century saw an unparalleled extension of democracy in terms of both its inclusiveness as well as its spatial expansion. So if we see the development of democracy, then we have seen that till 20th century, it started in 1901 to 1999 or 2000. Within this period, the proper development of democracy was taken place in the world. This is the full-fledged development of the democracy started all over the world from the 20th century in its exclusiveness way and its spatial expansion. Then come to the another point, waves of democracy. How we can discuss the democracy on the basis of time period, on the basis of situations. If we see, then we can categorize in some group. What are these? Let me check it first. Okay, we can categorize the wave of democracy in four wave democracy. The first wave, if we discuss what was the first wave of the development of democracy, the democratization of many countries in Europe in the 19th century is viewed as the first wave democratization. It means that the development of the democracy in England, in France, and America, it was the first wave of democratization. The second wave is dated to the period following the World War I, when many countries of the Europe, including those of the Scandinavia became democratic. So second wave, it is from World War First. When World War First came into exist, it is the time period of the First World War was 1914 to 1919. So from the First World War, the second wave of democratization started in the world. Then come to the third wave. The third wave of democracy came after the Second World War. Second World War, it was ended in 1945, started in 1939. When new democratic countries were established in the countries like Germany, Italy, due to the collapse of the Nazism and fascism. We know in between First World War and Second World War, the dictatorship government were available in Germany, Italy, etc. But after the Second World War, democracy came into being both in Germany and Italy, and it collapsed the Nazism and fascism. And also following the decolonizations in the world. So if we trace back, and if we go back, then we will able to see that till 1950, most of the countries, Asia, Africa, and Latin America, were under colonialism. This group of countries also gained independence, and they welcomed the democratic ideology in the formation of their government. So the third wave, establishment of democracy in Germany and Italy after the Second World War, and the acceptance of the democracy by the Asian, African, and Latin American countries who were under colonialism. The fourth wave of democracy saw a return to democracy in post-communist Eastern Europe, as well as in the many countries of the Latin America that have turned their backs on democracy. So what is the fourth wave? Fourth wave, which means some countries of the world, they accepted the communist government, communist ideology. And most of the political thinkers, they believe that these communist countries were not truly a democratic country, not actually a democratic country. So the first wave is that those communist countries which turn into democratic country, it is the fourth wave of democratization. So we have discussed this fourth wave of democratizations. Then democracy, what it is. When we discuss about the democracy, then we must think about some concept, some principles, some issues who are interrelated or integral part of the democracy. These are autonomy, rights, liberty, and equality. Keep in mind, we can realize the democracy on the basis of the concept of autonomy, on the basis of the concept of rights, on the basis of the concept of liberty, and on the basis of the concept of equality. In democracy, the concepts of rights, freedom, and equality are most central issue. What are the most central issue in democracy? Keep in mind, this is the rights, freedom, and equality. These are the rights, freedom, and equality. Development of the liberal traditions in the hands of the Hobbes and Locke. When we think about the rights, when we are thinking about the liberty, then we must go back to the ideology developed by Hobbes and Locke. Hobbes was the believer of the liberal ideology, and he believed on absolute monarchy, whereas the Locke was the persons who believed on the political sovereignty. He believed on the limited monarchy or limited constitutional government. Like that, in the hands of the Rousseau, the concept of the popular sovereignty gained importance, gained significance. In classical liberal political theory, those who are the classical liberal political theory, if we say Hobbes, Locke, James Mill, J.S. Mill, like that, then we see the classical liberal political theory, autonomy, freedom, and equality form the cornerstone of the liberal theory of democracy. If we discuss the democracy from many point of view, the first point of view that we can analyze the democracy on the basis of liberal theory. The liberal theory believes that the liberal political theory is based on the concept of autonomy, freedom, and equality. The principles of autonomy expresses the value that we attach to the possessing control over our own individual persons, decisions, and life source. It means the liberty, the autonomy related to own ideology, own belief, own faith, own attitude. So the line is put in your book. The principles of autonomy expresses the value that we attach to the possessing control over our own individual persons. I am sovereign over my mind, body, and soul. Every person is sovereign over his body, mind, and soul. Like own individual persons in his decisions and in his life choices. Where how he will develop, where he will be, how he will be control and conduct, whom he will believe, what will be his thought, what is his ideology. It is the matter of the individual, and that must be granted by the democracy. It is the belief of the liberal theory of democracy. Individuals are autonomous being capable of rational thought, and therefore the determining what is good for them. So liberal democratic thinkers, they believe that is the best democracy, where the individual autonomy is granted, where individual can do, individual can think, individual value may be formed on the basis of his own will without any restrictions, because every person know what is good and what is bad. So the peoples can find out the good, what to be done. So the rights of liberty, the liberty should be given to the human being or every individual. Then come to another concept. The duty of the state. What will be the duty of the state? If individual can think about himself, about his activities, about his future, then what is the necessity of the state? What state will do? According to liberal thinkers, the duty of the state is to protect the individual's life, liberty, and property. So what state should do? State only to protect the life, liberty, and the property, life, so that one person should not be harmed by others. It should be granted by the state. The liberty of the people, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, attitude, the liberty of the people should be granted, should be protected by the state. And liberty of the property, a person who can earn how much, they believe the survival of the fittest concept. They believe might is right concept. So they believe that the private property should be granted by the state. It asserts that all individuals, by virtue of human being, equally possess these rights. And these liberal thinkers, they believe that it is all these rights. What is the right? Right to life, right to liberty, and right to property. These three rights should be equally possessed by everyone, equally must enjoyed by the every person. But how is equally be achieved in the making of political decisions? When we are saying about the equality, how it can be implemented in the decision making process? Democratic theories make a distinction between prospective equality and retrospective equality. So keep in your mind. There are two types of equality. All people should be equal in the eye of law, we know it. All are equal in the society, we know it. No one should be discriminated on the ground of caste, community, religion, gender, and others, we know it. This is the equality. But what is how we can realize the equality in the real sense? If we realize the equality in the real sense, we must know two concepts. One is prospective equality, other is retrospective equality. What is prospective equality? Prospective equality obtains when in a decision is to be made. Keep in mind, prospective equality obtains when a decision is to be made. Every citizen starts off with an equal chance or influence the outcome of the democratic process, and no person or group suffer particular disabilities that prevent them from determining that decision. It means here is a question of opportunity. Prospective equality means give equal opportunity to everyone. Give equal opportunity to everyone so that everyone would be benefited from the decisions of the society, the decisions of the government, decisions of the political system, decisions of the democratic process. It means everyone must get the chance to take part in the democratic process, and the fruits of the democratic process should be benefited to everyone without discriminating anyone. Then what is the retrospective equality? Retrospective equality is as if in a decision that has already been taken, and we can say everyone equally determine their decisions. So what is the retrospective is that decision is taken previously. What is the decision has already been taken? And we can say this is the decisions taken by the people. Decisions taken by the people means it may be directly by the people or by their representative. Decisions already taken by the people, so peoples are liable to follow it. Peoples are liable, peoples are responsible, people should be dutiful, people should be loyal to the decisions taken by the government. It is because the government is formed by the peoples, and peoples has given the rights to the government to take such type of decisions. That is the retrospective. Retrospective means the decisions which already taken, but peoples that this is the decisions taken by the people themselves. So intrinsic and instrumental democracy. There are other type of democracy. There are two types of other democracy: intrinsic democracy and instrumental democracy. What is the intrinsic democracy and what is the instrumental democracy? Let us discuss. Democracy may be justified having intrinsic and instrumental value. Intrinsic, what is the meaning of intrinsic? Intrinsic means inherent. Intrinsic means basic. Intrinsic means essential. Intrinsic means fundamental. Intrinsic means central. Intrinsic means core. Intrinsic means key. So key issue. Sorry, not keep, the key issue. So intrinsic means key issues, key concept, core concept, central concept, fundamental concept, essential concept, basic concept, and inherent concept. Concept of the democracy. This is one kind of democracy. And what is the instrumental democracy then? Instrument. We know about the instrument. What is the instrument? Which when it is made, it is the activeness, it is the contributory, it is the involvement, it is the helpful, it is the influential. Instrumental. When something is given by somebody, when there is a well organization system, when there is a well instrumentalization system. So the question of instrumental value, or we can say the organizational value, or we can say it's a structural value. Intrinsic is the inherent value, internal value, and instrumental are the structural value. So come to the main concept. When we value democracy as good in itself or for itself, we assert the intrinsic value of democracy. So the core issue, inherent issue, internal issue of the democracy is good. Everyone accept it. We want a democratic country. We say that democracy is essential. Without democracy, we are not happy. So when we give such type of importance to the concept of democracy, then we realize that democracy is an ideal concept. Democracy is a moral concept. Democracy is a philosophical concept. Democracy is a very good concept. If we see like that way, then it is intrinsic. That is, we argue democracy is valuable for its own sake because it is the fairest way to giving expressions to the equality among citizens. Why we accept democracy? Because democracy based on the concept of equality, on the basis of the concept of liberty, on the basis of the concept of fraternity, on the basis of the based on the concept of the justice. So it is very good ideology. This is the intrinsic ideology. On the other hand, or we can say, if we view a way arriving at the decisions among a group of people, whether citizens of a polity or members of a neighborhood association or sports club, democracy is normally superior to any other way of arriving decisions. So, what is the value of the democracy in intrinsic ideology? Is that we want democratic ideology, influence of the democratic ideology in all type of our life. It may be in our family, in the institutions, or anything else where we are. Always we say this is not democratic, this is not fair. Fair is democratic and democracy is the fair. We think like that. It is the intrinsic concept of the democracy. On the other hand, democracy may also be valued instrumentally or as a means of some other. So, what is the instrumental democracy? That we can realize that democracy as a means to some other aim. Thus, it may be argued that democracy is good because it fosters competitions among the political leaders and so gives us a better choice of leadership. When we think it's organizationally, structurally, then we can hope that there are basic ideology of the organizations, and this ideology of the organization should be fulfilled by the political leaders. And in an instrumental democracy, therefore we are choosing our representatives. So therefore we are choosing our leaders. Right to vote. We are voting election. Election is an instrument of democracy. For elections, we are choosing our leaders. We have a legislature where the laws will be framed. So this is the instrument. A legislature itself is an instrument. We have an executive body who will implement the basic policies related to the fulfillment of the objectives of the democracy. It is the executive, so it is itself also an instrument. It is the judiciary itself. It is an instrument. It is an instrument, and this judiciary will give us the justice. We believe on it, but it may or may not be related to the basic concept. Practically, we may not see that the instruments are working for the establishment of the basic concept of democracy. Democracy may also be justified as a way of minimizing the abuse of political power by distributing it equally among citizens. Another instrumental justification of democracy is its role in human development to the extent that it encourages the people to take responsibility for their political lives. So, what the people expect from the state, from the government, these are the instrumentals. And what the democracy should give actually to the people, that is the intrinsic democracy. Then, come to the another one. It is the, I think, here we should stop. Why we should stop in here? Because in the coming days, we have to discuss another concept of the democracy which are more important. Until here, you should keep it in your mind. You should keep it in your mind what I have already discussed. I will give this video to the YouTube. Subscribe, give feedback, and make comments as well as give your suggestions so we can develop it again. Okay, then come to discuss. In the next class, we will discuss about the procedural democracy and substantial democracy. I think on Wednesday we will meet again. Until then, I want to stop. I think no query has been made by you. If any query you have, you should be feel free to ask me through WhatsApp. And on Thursday or Friday, we will clear your doubts. On Thursday or Friday, we will clear your doubts. Okay.